As a guy on the autistic spectrum, I've never been shy about my autism. I believe it's important to be open around others, to help educate and make people understand not only myself but others just like me. And as a film buff, wannabe director that is, I have seen tens of on-screen portrayals of the disorder. Over the last few months, before even planning this short documentary, I began researching deeper into the topic. Hopefully the following will give you a better insight to the world of on-screen portrayals of autism. Autism in media, much like autism itself, is an extremely complicated thing. To quickly brief, autism is a lifelong developmental disorder, but that does not mean it's a disease, nor is it anything that needs to be cured. It simply means your brain is wired differently from others, which comes with a bunch of positives and negatives. I'll leave a list of signs of autism right beside me here. Signs of autism aren't always noticed when you're young. For me personally, it took till I was 16 to notice that I had autism. Some people may never get their autistic diagnosis, and this could be due to numerous reasons, including things like lack of money in countries that require paid medical health care, families' religious beliefs, countries' policies, etc., etc. Some autistics are far more likely to have other disorders, like ADHD or OCD, and are 5 times more likely to have depression and suicidal thoughts. Due to masking, a process which most autistics, including myself, are far too comfortable using, either inadvertently or intentionally, we are able to somewhat hide our autistic traits to help better fit in to social situations in society. And those who identify themselves as women are proven to be far better at masking and hiding their autistic traits, which can lead to doctors often having trouble diagnosing women. Unlike gay representation back in the day, which was present, but was hidden just enough so regular moviegoers wouldn't catch any hints.
I'm only kidding, Brandon. I obviously can't take it as well as you.
Autistic representation was entirely non-existent, which makes a hell of a lot of sense once we consider that most of what we know about autism in the present day comes from a German man named Hans Asperger's from 1930. I wonder what he and his friends did in 1930. That's besides the point. The fact of the matter is, primarily the reason why we don't use labels like Asperger's or high functioning or low functioning is because a lot of those labels are associated with the Nazis, like Hans Asperger was. It wouldn't be till 1969's Change of Habit did we finally get the first on-screen representation of an autistic person. Yes, Elvis Presley's 31st film, I know, shocking, right? Features Dr. Elvis Presley looking after a non-verbal girl, who he believes to be deaf. It, however, turns out that she's not in fact deaf, but autistic. And doing the only logical thing in 1969, Elvis Presley cures her autism by climbing on top of her and hugging her. This practice was a very controversial, bullshit practice that was known as rebirthing therapy. 19 years later, things didn't get much better, with Barry Levinson's Oscar award-winning drama Rain Man. Not only did Barry Levinson seemingly know nothing about autistics, he would also go on to spawn Sam Levinson, so 6 and 2 threes really. While there's stories of Dustin Hoffman studying for this role, he only studied one book in particular, one specifically about autistic savants. And at the end of the day, he's nothing more than a neurotypical actor trying to mimic the movement and behavior of a neurodivergent.
Do you know how much the square root of 2,130 is?
46.15192304. 2304.
The whole savant thing is inherently wrong to begin with when you consider that only 0.5% of autistics are savants. This is put into perspective once you realise, according to my estimation, 75% of autistic characters fit into this category. For example, The Good Doctor, Queen's Gambit, Cube, Mercury Rising, Mass Effect 2, and Predator 2019, which goes so far as to say that our lead character, an autistic child, can read a centuries-forgotten ancient alien language. And the Predator hunts him specifically because, and I quote, "The Predator believes that autism is the next step in human evolution." This one's more hilariously, terribly researched than offensive to me, personally. I'd say 20% of autistic characters fit into the other category, that being, they seem as though they've taken a severe blow to the head when they were children. Characters like Forrest Gump, Gilbert Grape, and Chauncey Gardner from Hal Ashby's Being There, a political satire of Americana that boils down to roughly the idea that any retard could run for president and succeed. Hal Ashby's words, not mine. Yet there's no looking past the fact that Rain Man is ultimately a story about a narcissistic con man, played by Tom Cruise, who probably wasn't aware that the cameras were rolling, going and kidnapping his estranged autistic brother to try and get the $3 million that his father left to him.
Ow! Don't make a scene. Ow! Stop acting like a fucking retard. Uh-oh.
Throughout the film, said narcissistic con man verbally and physically abuses his brother, puts him in triggering situations which cause meltdowns, even leading to him self-harming. Yet we're told at the end of the day, it's all forgotten, because said narcissistic con man learned to grow a heart in the last 5 minutes, and he realised that maybe, just maybe, he shouldn't con his autistic brother and abuse him. Looking back now, Rain Man is severely outdated and potentially harmful when you consider the fact that most people's knowledge of autism begins and ends with Rain Man. Even Rain Man's Nazi labelling of high functioning is incorrect, as he clearly can't function in social life. He can't even cross the street without causing some sort of harm to himself. As someone who's been treated my entire life, like I too was Rain Man, by ex-classmates, teachers, and my own alcoholic abusive father, it was nothing short of torture to subject myself to watch this movie. And this is not even mentioning the anti-autism narratives that are present in all types of media. With celebrities like Jim Carrey, Matthew McConaughey, Lisa Bonet, Jessica Biel, Charlie Sheen, and former President Donald Trump, hopefully it stays that way, all subscribing to this bullshit alt-right conspiracy theory that vaccines at a young age cause autism. This whole bullshit theory was created and started by disgraced and discredited former physician Andrew Wakefield, who not only was convicted of unlawful experiments on children, but whose first line on Wikipedia says that he's a fraudster. Sadly, even Robert De Niro, a man who I look up to and a man who continues to inspire me to this very day, is an anti-vaxxer who's embarrassed by his own son's autism. He even went as far as to support Andrew Wakefield's bullshit film in 2016. It really hurts when you know that a man who you look up to thinks that you're a biological mistake. Simply put, because of such horrific and damaging discussions of autism in film and reality, this has led many autistics to start claiming fictional characters as one of them. Canon, after all, in media refers to something that is set in stone by the creator. Therefore, headcanon is simply just speculation by the people watching said media.
Is there any characters that you sort of relate to?
I feel like I relate to him from a kind of spark and maybe Entrapta a bit. It's just like I've gone through similar things to what he's gone through and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of relate to that, you know.
What are your special interests?
I'm so glad you asked. Basically, Elder Scrolls, mainly Skyrim, The Sims, Animal Crossing, Outer Worlds at the moment because I'm replaying that.
What changes would you like to see in the future for representation on screen?
Well, I would like more stuff actually explaining. It's like, yeah, I mean, people are surprised that, and more people to be aware that autistic people aren't just straight, white, cis men. It's more little kids, it's people of all different colours, all genders, all sexualities. You know, I mean, it's different. It's be anyone, it can even be you.
Now, before I get into characters that I personally relate to, I must address a disturbing trend in representation that's been happening pretty recently. With Netflix's Night Clerk, we have an autistic character portrayed as a sexual harassing stalker. With Fred Durst's, yes, Limp Bizkit's Fred Durst's The Fanatic, starring John Travolta, we have yet another case of an autistic stalker who stalks a celebrity and then attempts to murder him. And finally we have The Accountant, starring Ben Affleck, as an autistic, mass-murdering hitman. Now all three of these films have something in common. And what they have in common is the fact that they're all punching down on autistics, but not just that, they're portraying us as some sort of psychopathic threat. And it's not just these three movies, it's other media. Now earlier in this video I mentioned that according to my research, about 75% of on-screen portrayals of autistics are savants. And I also mentioned that 20% fall into the dumb, bumbling idiot category. Now that remaining 5%, however, there's some actual good and positive portrayals of autistic characters. Now some of these are confirmed autistic characters, some are my personal headcanon, so it's all up to interpretation pretty much. But to me personally, I relate to Robert Graysmith from Zodiac.
Does anyone ever call me names? Or...
You mean like retard?
Yeah.
No.
Max from Mary and Max, Mozart from Amadeus, Barry from Punch Drunk Love, and my personal favourite, Cooper from Twin Peaks. Now with Cooper, I could have made this entire documentary about why I relate to him so much as a character and why he's so fantastic. I could have talked endlessly about how Kyle MacLachlan just nails the idiosyncrasy of autistics and how fantastic his performance is. I could have talked about Cooper's stimming or his love of certain special interests like nature, specifically trees, and all this other type of stuff like his awkwardness and social interactions. But instead, I'd like to highlight what really defines Cooper, which is, surprisingly, his empathy. And the show was directed by David Lynch, but it was also written by him and co-creator Mark Frost. Now, David Lynch in real life has sort of come out and talked about his own speculations on the fact that he may be autistic. But I don't really want to delve into that. As I said, I want to focus on more on Cooper. And during the 3 seasons that the show is on, Cooper is lovable. Not just the audience loves him. I mean that characters around him are obsessed with him because of how friendly he is. Cooper as a detective is completely different from any detectives you'll ever see because he listens. He's told by Harry Truman that the log lady is mad, that she's out of her mind. Yet Cooper treats her with the same seriousness of Laura Palmer's parents in their confession. Cooper is against injustice and is one of the only men to support his friend in her gender transition. And for the time, in 1990, that was completely unheard of for a popular series to have such loving and caring trans representation. And this kind of unbelievable, strong empathy and sense of injustice and social structure and all this type of stuff is so not only inherent in me, but is present in a lot of autistics. And people often mistake that. We're often told that we lack empathy, which some do, but there's just as many of us who have so much empathy that sometimes it's too much. You physically wear yourself out at the end of the day. So please, listen. By enjoying music from the likes of David Byrne from Talking Heads, The Roots, Lady Hawk, Gary Newman, even Mozart, playing games like Pokemon, or watching Tim Burton, Dan Aykroyd, Stanley Kubrick films, you have engaged with an autistic creator and artist. Their work is sheer joy, and a safe echo chamber of self-expressing ecstasy. Their work is inherently tied with their autistic experiences and feelings, because it's part of them, but it does not, and definitely does not, define them. Thank you for listening.